Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to call the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Monday, March 6, 2023 back to order. We started tonight's meeting at 5:30 in an executive session where we discussed non-union personnel contracts or negotiations and the HMEA, Harwich Maintenance and Employees Association contract. We did agree on a contract with HMEA, so that is finishing 6 out of our 8 contracts. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
When it comes time, the vacancy list.
You can read that? Okay. Public comment and announcement?
Good evening, Cindy Williams, Executive Director of the Harwich Chamber of Commerce. I put in front of each of you this Wednesday's second housing huddle for Harwich. It will be at 204 Sisson in the auditorium this time, and it is 6 to 7:30. This is in order for the people that could not join us during the early morning one, that they can now attend the evening event. Also, I just wanted to take a second. Last week, we were so busy at our meeting, and you approved our newest event, but I just wanted to give a little teaser of what it is. It is a barbecue competition with our restaurants, and it is live on our website, so you can start buying your tickets. So thank you for approving our newest event.
Thank you, Cindy.
And we're doing it at the Harwich Community Center.
Kara Moini, Director of Cultural Affairs. You have a flyer in front of you to tell you about an awesome concert coming up at 204 Sisson Road. It's Cassie and Maggie McDonald, and it's actually sponsored by Harwich Cranberry Festival. It's going to be right in our auditorium. Tickets are still available, and we're super excited to have them back. So it's at 7 o'clock, March 18th. It's Cassie and Maggie McDonald. It's going to be a fantastic show, and I've heard there's even a little stage coming in for Irish step dancing, so that's a fun treat. But the other thing is we are still accepting applications for our Seaside Marketplace. We still have a few weeks available. They actually filled up pretty fast, and we want to get it out there. So we're excited to launch summer 2023. We just want to fill the whole schedule. And then we still have a call to art for our community art show, which will be on April 29th. So we welcome any Harwich resident in any medium to come and submit a piece for work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've actually got my tickets for the March 18th, but I'm not allowed to dance.
Good evening, Bernadette Waystack, Harwich Cultural Council Chair. I just wanted to let everyone know that we've got a community input forum coming up on Saturday, March 18th at 2 p.m. That'll be at the 204 in the library meeting room. The purpose of this is to gather input from the community about what they want to see in terms of how we craft or revise our criteria for awarding grants for the LLC. There are hard copy surveys also out at Brooks Free Library, at the Harwich Community Center, at the Chamber of Commerce, and at the 204 for those who either would like to give the input that way and or can't make the meeting, as well as we have a digital link to a survey on our social media, our Facebook page, and our Instagram account. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Carol Ridley here to share some news about a new initiative, the Six Ponds Resource Management Initiative, which is a new community-based planning effort that's being sponsored by the Harwich Conservation Trust. And it really is designed to deepen our understanding of what we can do as a community to safeguard the unique and very valuable resources in this area. So the town had tremendous insight to seek the designation of the District of Critical Planning Concern back in 2000. And this designation was significant because it recognized the tremendous water resource values of this unique area, but also the habitat value. And what we're learning more is the carbon sequestration potential and community resilience benefits of having large areas of unfragmented forest. So a lot has occurred over the past couple of decades, and this initiative is going to give us an opportunity to gather data and really deepen our understanding of resource conditions and what we can do through community engagement, to develop management strategies to ensure that we protect this area going forward in the future. This Saturday, there's going to be a special program at the Harwich Community Center at 1 p.m., sponsored by the Trust, open to the public. So anyone who's interested in learning more about the initiative, please plan to attend. There's more information on the Harwich Conservation Trust website as well. And in this vein, I just also wanted to note, saw on the agenda later today that there is consideration of a zoning article that would relax certain zoning standards for accessory dwelling units. And there's been some discussion about whether that should apply to the Six Ponds District. We feel that at this time that wouldn't be appropriate without the benefit of that additional data collection and assessment of resource conditions and what's going on in the district. So we would urge you to give that some careful consideration. We'd like to come back to you in the future and provide more information as this initiative unfolds, but we really think that any decisions about policy in this area really need to be science-based and have the benefit of some broad community engagement. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Carol. Elizabeth.
Hello, everybody. I'm short. For those of you who don't know me, I am Elizabeth Harder, and I am the Harwich delegate to the Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates, which is county government that exists. And very exciting things are happening, so I'm glad there's so many people here to spread it around. Just in terms of what I'm personally working on, after paying dues for a couple of years, I'm now the vice chair of the Public Services Subcommittee, and I'm also serving on the Economic Affairs Committee, the Health and Human Services Committee, and I'm still on my favorite, the Telecommunications and Energy Committee. And starting with telecommunications, something I want everyone to know about is the County Commission, the Cape Cod Commission, is doing a broadband access study, which is about digital equity, which means that even if it basically focuses on four things: availability of broadband, affordability of broadband, access to devices to get on broadband, and having the skills to utilize broadband. So hopefully spring, summer, we'll have a big study about that will be able to help the towns know who we need to help. But while that's going on, I learned about something very interesting for Harwich residents. If you go to fcc.gov/ACP, that's the FCC Government Affordable Connect Program, you can apply for help if you're having problems meeting your, paying your bills for broadband. So that help is available now at the federal level. And then the other news, which is the best news, is the Aqua Fund is up and running. And it's spelled capital AQUI, capital FUND. And this is what used to be called the Septic Loan Program. And it is for people who are now being told they have to hook up to sewers, or might be told in the future that you have to change your septic, upgrade it, change to an AI. Whatever changes are coming down the pike, you can now get a loan from the county through the Aqua Fund, and it's incredibly good rates. Up to, I think it's 120 AMI, 0% interest. And then in between that and 180, I think, is 2%. And then if you make over that, it's still only a 4% loan. So for anybody who's worrying about hooking up, being told what they have to do, that is a great resource for you. And then just to let you know, since two things on your agenda, one, the Public Services Committee that I'm on, we are doing a deep dive into the dredge. Because it had some problems in the past, and we really need to make sure that it's healthy and whole, because what the dredge offers to towns at a discount is so necessary to everyone on the Cape. So we're working on that, getting that healthy. And just to what Carol said, the other two studies that we used ARPA money for, or one ARPA and one not, for the Cape Cod Commission to do studies are freshwater pond initiative and a housing study, a comprehensive housing study. And the freshwater ponds initiative is going to help with watershed areas and the local ponds, you know, so that we know how not to pollute them so much. And they'll probably have some ideas about zoning around the ponds. And then the, I think, $1 million we gave them for the housing study, the object of that is to set up something not unlike the 208 plan that they did with water. So they will then have all sorts of ideas, examples, and ways to help you do the zoning changes, bylaw changes, whatever, for things like ADUs and all that. So, and that's supposed to be done in the by midsummer. So you might just want to wait for that, or think about it in terms of the zoning changes, because we'll have a lot more information then, and we'll also hopefully by then know what the Mass DEP is going to do about watersheds. They still haven't finalized those. So anyway, that's my news. Any questions?
Thank you. Larry, any questions?
No, thank you.
Don?
Thank you.
Julie?
No, thank you very much. Good
All right.
thought.
And if the public ever wants to reach me, it's elizabeth.harder, Harder, at capecod.gov. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Anyone else for public comment? Committee vacancies, Julie?
So we currently have the list of vacancies, and anybody interested, please put in a citizens petition, citizens form to the town administrator's office. We currently have Agricultural Commission, 3 full, 1 alternate. Capital Outlay Committee, Board of Selectmen, Town Administrator appointee, we need 2. Community Center Facilities Committee, 1. Conservation Commission, we need 1 alternate. Council on Aging, 1. Harwich Accessibility Rights Committee, we need 2 alternates. Harwich Cultural Council, 1. Harwich Energy and Climate Action Committee, 2 alternates. Harwich Housing Committee, 1. Historic District / Historical Commission, we need 2 full members and 1 associate member. Planning Committee, we're going to have a vacancy, 1. Real Estate and Open Space Committee, 1. Voter Information Committee, 3. Youth Services, 1 full and 1 alternate, so that's a total of 2. And Zoning Board of Appeals, 2 alternates. Again, Citizens Committee vacancy forms are available on the website and at the Town Administrator's office. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
you should just state for the record that you're joined by your colleague remotely.
What Joe said, Mary Anderson is, Selectman Anderson is online remotely tonight. Consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, I move that we vote to accept the following 3 resignations effective immediately. Let me just ask a question. Have any of these people actually resigned to the clerk?
Okay, the
Yes.
clerk stamped them all.
They
Okay,
stamped them all, yes.
so, okay, they started that way. And with sending them a letter of thanks for their service. First one would be William E. Stoltz from the Planning Board. The second one is James Manigan, Council on Aging, and the third is Joseph Beasley, Zoning Board of Appeals. I also move that we vote to approve the February 21st, 2023 minutes for the Selectmen's meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Only that, always, we very much appreciate the volunteers. I know one of them left, is moving to Brewster, I believe it is, so there's good reason they left, but please keep our committees in mind.
Thank you, Larry.
And
Don?
Bill Stoltz was serving from, I believe, the late 90s, and then left and then came back again. So he has done an incredible amount of dedicated work for the town.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4-0, Joe?
Is Ms. Anderson voting this evening, or?
Mary, do you want to vote on that?
Then we have to.
No.
Thank you.
Okay. New business, discussion on possible uses and requests for proposals, RFP, for 204 Sisson Road, including but not limited to, update from Director of Cultural Affairs on operational status, including but not limited to events, floor plans, building opportunities, etc. Requests for proposals for cultural programs, requests for proposal for social and human service uses, including but not limited to an integrative academic program. Joe, do you want to open this? Kara, come on up.
I was just going to recognize our Director of Cultural Affairs.
Excellent. Why don't we, want to thank you first and foremost for all the information in our packet. I think this answers a lot of questions that have been asked. And it's a great broad look at what we can be doing with that building. So thank you for all the information.
Absolutely, my pleasure. All right. Don't mind me as I just get set up real quick.
We could do some step dancing while you're doing that.
You want to lead the way?
He's not allowed to.
He's not allowed to dance.
No? Okay. Well, that's unfortunate.
we heard.
Maybe at the concert. All right. So I'm here tonight to present an overall report of the 204, what it could be for the town of Harwich. It wasn't long after that I began that I saw the vision was already existing in the town, and the story was just left untold, which is my favorite part. The 204 was never given the chance for the community to see what it started as and what's evolved into. It is without a doubt that our facility grows daily, not just through program that the tenants, who many of which are here tonight, have provided, but also through many resources through Harwich Cranberry Festival and other engaging community partners that we've been able to work with. To many artists, creatives, and makers, it began to be a cultural community, back when they set up shop long before I had the pleasure to be there. Classes were implemented, open houses were held, community stakeholders began hosting events, and programs were developed. That has simply not changed. We want to grow on that. Since my start, we were effectively able to navigate many opportunities to programs or other activities to further enhance our offering. Additionally, we welcomed some new and old faces back to our event rental structure, and conversations began with many outfits throughout the state and New England region to speak to potential future use of the facility. These groups and organizations work with national partners, and it is imperative to get the facility for what it is now in front of them so they're on notice and they know what we can provide them for the future. The concept I'm speaking to tonight for the facility is that we can create a simple understanding of what the building is for marketing and branding purposes so that we're able to tell and sell, quote unquote, the facility and give us the opportunity to prioritize what is taking place and place further development into the future program possibilities. This will also help us in navigating the future understanding for facility management requests along with the operational oversight of the building. At the end of the day, we are just talking about a building and it's 4 walls. But what I've learned through the town of Plymouth is that every building has a story, and that is my favorite part, like I said. Every building, no matter its purpose, has a value and can provide incredible resources to the community. I loved every challenge I had with telling the story of a historic building, and the stories I can tell today are always the stories of how I was so fortunate to be a part of a community gathering hub in the town, and that feeling is something indescribable. I see that future in the 204, the feeling of warmth, collaboration, good-hearted community members, volunteerism, and enjoyment in life, all shared between the walls of the facility. The 204, presented as, quote-unquote, cultural arts municipal building, will envision a vibrant, connected community engaged in discovering, exploring, and creating. The supportive power of extended family in all of its definitions is embraced, as this belief that spirit of energy and community and our participation in it empowers and transforms. It'll be the heartbeat of the Harwich Cultural Districts. The 204 nurtures the voices of artists, creatives, and works to cultivate leaders who lift up our people and work to attract individuals and organizations to provide community programs and resources that will drive the community forward. The warmth, enthusiasm, and unity of our cultural hub echo throughout Harwich and serves an example of inclusive art making, kinship, and cultural expression. The 204 is a place where art happens, business happens, life happens, and community grows. It'll start a dialogue, and social infrastructure will be fostered. I firmly believe in making, showing, performing, and experiencing art and culture in its many forms should be safe, affordable, and accessible to everyone. A community-driven municipal building that is committed to those who live, work, study, play, and create in the town of Harwich and beyond. The 204 would elevate the experiences, leadership, and needs of art organizations, individuals, and groups. Culture is essential for a healthy, caring, compassionate, just community. Welcoming space that is accessible and allowing for experiences and resources to develop provides the best strategy for revitalizing a community. Through many program opportunities, the mission came through. The concept of developing our basic building blocks and foundation will support years of evolved programming and expansion in many areas. We have reached a variety of resources that can serve the community within enhanced or newly developed programs, such as our future culinary arts program with the support of Cafe 204, for example, which is where we can create a community gathering location for folks to grab a tea, coffee, pastry, or even just come in and have a seat to gather. It would serve a municipal lunch program and catering options available for rentals and town service members. The expansion of the culinary arts program will lead into offerings for youth to active older adults and serve as an internship location for youth and school partners. The growth of this program can lead into a general education and nutrition program, as well as a farm-to-table concept of growing and caring for your food and how it is used in your dishes. Another program that can start and grow is our creative art therapy program. Within two important sections, one first and foremost is focused on veterans and military families. The other is focused on youth. Through the veteran program, there's an opportunity for federal funding. Through creative art therapy and expressive art, we can engage communities in ways we never imagined. We have many talented artists here at the 204 that have success with working with individuals with disabilities and juveniles at risk. These programs extensions will allow us the chance to cast our net on a broader group to benefit. Our general arts and education cultural programs through our tenants and community members will continue to expand as we network and collaborate with more instructors, organizations, and groups to provide diverse programs. Other areas of impact for increased program and offering would be for our veteran-based celebrations and collaboration, municipal use for department heads in their program meetings, extension of recreational programming, wedding and other private event use for event rentals. There's a fine balance between private and public events. Private events will help stimulate revenue growth, and the public events have a direct reflection into the community engagement factors. Provided for you tonight in the packet was the 204 Action Guide, which provides an overview of the current operating structure, market analysis, operating plan, and a marketing sales plan. The concept of 204 Sisson Road as it sits is cultural arts municipal building with a focus of the mission and the vision of the facility. A map that shows we have 36 studios currently in use with 42 artists in-house. The area available for additional program and event rental is noted as the gymnasium, auditorium, cafeteria, and library, essentially the two large fields. And lastly, an overview of cultural programming efforts that we can take place with additional support and instructors. So a few things to note. On your table, I provided you just a financial operational overview, which is just to give you an idea of how things look and it shakes out in the current model that we have. With that, we average about $120,000 a year in a financial overview. So that is our cost of custodian, our paper goods for the custodian, things like gas, water, heat, all of the fun stuff. And then we add in all the revenue from long-term studio rental into our Saquotucket Harbor. We get a percentage of that, as well as our event and program revenue. So our all-in for the expense is about $120,000 a year, with our revenue sitting at about $160,000 a year. So to the revolving, we can show that we have a net gain of $45,000 a year. Now these are estimates. Sean Libby was not able to provide me updated numbers as he is somewhere tropical, I heard. So these are just positive impact to show that the current model we have does have a direct reflect on our revenue numbers. So if we sustain our current model and then enhance it, we're only looking at additional revenue gain on top of the fact that we have more opportunity for grant sponsorships, for all levels of event sponsorship. We can really branch into multiple opportunities. When the question comes into play about staffing cost, we have the opportunity to charge that direct cost to the renter. So in most structures that you have an event venue, especially at a municipal building that is looking to do operations like this, they do charge the contract, meaning the renter of the facility, a staffing fee, whether it's just an event manager, it could be a technician to provide support for audio and visual needs, it could be a custodian fee, whatever that fee may be, we would build that into the contracted price. So it's not that we'd be hiring someone having to pay for that up front, it would be paid by the rentals. And this person would essentially only be working for the rentals that support that fee. So all in all, we're financially, in a way, looking at a potential gain year after year that would reflectly go into the revolving account that would allow us the opportunity to continue to grow and then put back into the facility. The benefit of the revolving would be that we take that funds, we invest back into what we need for the facility, whether it be staff growth or for additional changes and renovations to the facility. So that's our brief overview there. What we need to do is establish our understanding of our vision for the facility so that we can move forward for marketing and branding purposes. If we identify the area, which we have identified that it's a cultural art use, and I know that Joe has a presentation tonight, we need to get to a point that we can market and sell the building. Anyone that I've spoke to as far as a partner or anybody regionally, it's confusing to them. And when they hear negativity along with it, it causes a very drawn out discussion that leads to just confusion. And so the goal is that we want to develop a sound plan so that we can market and brand the facility so that it develops a very just marketing program that allows us to increase these rentals that we're talking about. So a few people I do want to mention that have been a huge part into making what it is today, not just our tenants, but we have been working with many individuals. We've been working with the Chamber, the Cranberry Festival, the Harwich Climate Action Network, Cape Cod Arts Foundation, Payamet, which you've heard me talk about before. Miss Cape Cod Regional Scholarship Program came to us this past year and will be coming back annually. Cape Sands Ballroom Dance has been hosting multiple events with us in our gymnasium. We have 2 local dance studios that have also been utilizing our space. People that we have been talking to on a regional effort, we've been talking to multiple musicians, their talent managers, tour managers, production managers. We've been talking with radio stations from here up through Marshfield, my friends at the Police Academy, which I love so dear, all the Cape Cod Radio Network. We've been talking with Spectacle Live, who is New England's largest entertainment company that basically services and rents municipal facilities. That's their gig. That's where they like to stay. Many management reps, drum corps, military groups, etc. So I will open it for questions.
Like I started, great job.
Thank you.
When did you start?
July.
July. Thank you. Larry?
Thank you, Chair. Your presentations wore me out, but I'll.
I get that a lot.
But great report. It answers a lot of my questions. I don't have much to add to that. I did make some comments, Michael, and I went through a lot of those. And I think we've discussed a little bit. My concern for the last couple of meetings has been that what you and I talked about is be sure that we're looking at a vision of what our regional approach is. Because I think we can be more than the Cultural Center in Harwich. I think we can be an entity on the Cape. We share, maybe we do something better here and another town does another item better. So you're already exploring that. And I think I don't want to add to your workload. Well, I do, because I'm going to suggest this. Because I think one of the concerns I have in reading the last report, and Joel, I think the report before that, was the separation of the municipal side of the building and the cultural side. For me, I would like to take the cultural center as being the primary focus of that building. And I'd like, when you explore all the avenues, is not limit ourselves to what the structure of the building is until we see what those are. And then work on the municipal space we need, not to prejudge that. Because I think in some ways that ties your hands behind your back. And I do appreciate the financial side of that. I did make a comment, and I don't want to be defensive on this, but I get this comment that, we can't run government like a business. Well, we can. The goals and what we're doing is different. We're not expecting the town to make a profit. We're not expecting you to make a profit, by the way. But I think all good operations have financial responsibility, revenues and expenses, and track those. And you've done a good job of putting that together. So keep on where you're going. And my only vision, I think, or push is to even more expand what you're doing on the regional side. And I think my plea to Joe would be to not tie our hands up immediately till we have a chance to look at what our opportunities are, and then maybe come back and offer the opportunity to maybe restructure the building that's needed. But nice job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too agree. I've been waiting for this. It's other than saying we love having cultural activities, which is
Right.
something that most people would buy into. But the only thing that still concerns me, and I've expressed this to you in the past, is like the Mass Cultural Council capacity building guidelines. Is generally they're anathema to build it and they will come. They talk in terms of, stress on facilities and where you're maxed out and where you can actually take the next step and increase. Given all of that, I'm still not entirely sold on renovating the auditorium because I'm not sure who the renters are going to be, because you can forget who's been renting it. I'm still not at the point where you renovate it to a particular place and then people will start coming into it. I'd like to see who it is that would like to have that kind of facility built out for the way that you're planning on it. Because right now it's a cafetorium. It's not really an auditorium. There's two things going on there. And I'm pretty sure that everybody would like to see the culinary part of that remain. So you're not going to be building out the auditorium from front to back. Which gets me back to, okay, so what are you going to do with it? Because as it sits right now, I'm really familiar with theaters. As it sits right now, it's really not a theater. And it isn't outfitted to be one in terms of the space, and wings, and that kind of stuff. So that part I still am not sold on. The other parts, you did a great job expressing what everybody's doing, and it warms my heart going through the building and seeing all of the artists in all those facilities. And we probably could do a better job at outfitting, what they've got and to what they need, which was the other thing I want to thank you for. I've been waiting for stakeholders to have a meeting to express what they want as opposed to a meeting where we tell them what we're going to do. So thank you for that.
Any response on the auditorium? Because we're not looking at spending a lot of money to build it out. We're looking to improve some things to start bringing some people in.
Right.
I differ a little bit from Don. I do believe build it and they will come. You've already talked to groups. You already have an idea who wants to use that and what they're willing to pay, I believe.
I do.
Respond to Don's
Yeah,
comment.
absolutely. So the auditorium would basically be fixing the systems that no longer are in use, they're end of life. By fixing the wall alone, we actually enhance our seating capacity, which is essential for even Pay a Met to come in the door. So Pay a Met has a minimum capacity of 280 seats that would allow them at a feasible operating standpoint for them for break even. So even for them to come in, we'd have to increase our capacity, which we can do by replacement of the moving wall. Now, yeah, we're not building towards the back, but we're enhancing the room so that it can be a multi-versatile space. So comedy clubs, for example, Improv Boston, JJR Productions out of New Hampshire. They're an organization that deal with Lenny Clark is one of their biggest clients. He would be benefiting to come down here. But again, it's room capacity and also what we offer. We do not have a sound system that can handle those groups to come in. We have a portable unit that's, on its best day, something I can make work. So any type of enhancement that we would do is a base minimum level to provide an opportunity to these individuals to come in, these groups to come in and just start performing right away at a rate that's feasible that we'd actually have an ROI on. And then, yes, there's groups that would add to our system, but the baseline of what we're asking for is enough to start appeasing these groups that we've already had these general conversations with.
And do you have a rough number on what it would cost to get to that point? Not the expansive one, but to fix a few things to get these groups in.
Well, we're looking at $475,000 in the auditorium. That could be supplemented with facilities grants and other capital and grants.
Okay. Any follow-up, Don?
No, although I will concur with everything she said. The sound system is being run by mice in a cage. I mean,
I cleaned them up.
and the light system, if you want to do performances, is pretty elemental too. So there's a lot wrong with it in terms of what people would expect. And I will also agree, she didn't bring it up, but even a black box performance, if there's rights fees involved, they've got to cover that, and they got to cover the rental. So there is a nut where you have to have so many seats filled in each performance in order for you to be able to pull it off.
Right.
So I totally understand that.
Thank Julie?
So thank you very much. I love your report. It's thorough. You've given us some numbers at least to crunch, which, you know, obviously has been a big bone of contention for some people. I like what you're doing here because you've brought in a lot of different avenues and you're working with a lot of different potential clients and companies. I also like the idea of the sponsorship section that you put in, you know, as well as the improvements that are needed. I think some of that might even qualify, some of those improvements might, through our green communities, get us some funding as well. And, you know, to the point of you can't run government like a business, which I know that was me, Larry. Ultimately, I think it's true. I mean, you can make fiscally sound decisions and try to address these things in the best financial manner for the town. But overall, a town and the government functions to serve its people in town. And I don't think that anyone here could say that the various programs you just went through wouldn't benefit any particular member of this town. And I think that the idea of the creative art therapy is a wonderful program. I think you have so many different private and public aspects here that, and your energy and your thoughtfulness, I think really you're such a great steward for that building, and we appreciate all your hard work. So I look forward to what can grow from here, but I'm with But I do, I'm with the chair. I do think that, you know, there's certain improvements that you do need to make in order to bring in those bigger players. And wow, what a thought for Harwich to have such an integral piece, so thank you.
My pleasure.
Mary?
Kara, absolutely nothing about the cultural center concerns me. I think we are poised to have an incredibly successful operation under your leadership, and I would like to see us wrap up some of the negativity around it and just let Kara do her job.
Thank you, Mary. Joe? We're going to stay on this before we get on to any RFPs.
Sure. Well, first, I hired her. And I only put that out there because, you know, there was concern a year ago as we were developing the position. Could we possibly find somebody with the skill set to find grant monies? Could we possibly find somebody with the skill set that can take not a fully dilapidated public building, but a building in disrepair and in sore need of TLC? And can we find somebody who's then going to have a vision? Ta-da! So that's what we have in Ms. Mawini. And when we talked a little more than a year ago, I think, she's already talked about a very similar type of situation in the town of Plymouth. And so there's a direct correlation between what she's done, what she can do, what she has done, and what we need. And I echo what everybody said about what she brings to the table. But for me, I've been familiar with that since the day she started, and I believe it was July 6, 2022.
July 5th.
Dang it. All I know is I was on vacation, so I missed you that day. No, but from day one, Kara has been an immediate and positive impact, as I suggested to you folks that you affirmed the appointment, and she's done exactly that. So really, for me, and on behalf of Kara and what she does, I would say we, staff, need concrete decisions and thoughts from the board. Select Board Member Anderson, I think, couldn't have said it any better. There is negativity around the address and around the potential uses and around the costs. And that's what I deal with day in and day out. So what I like about how we work together as a team is I'm your parliamentarian. I'm your procurement guy. I'm the guy that sucks the life out of the room. But that's what you need in municipal government. And you pair that with a visionary and somebody that is as creative as Kara. So we need direction and we need guidance. There are existing issues right now that we've never addressed because we haven't gotten to this point of being able to see the future as it's been laid out. We have significant traffic flow issues. The Board of Selectmen is going to help me have a conversation with the Monomoy Regional School District because that building remains in use, but you can't use it during certain times of the day because of a traffic flow pattern that has been allowed to carry over. Now, Dr. Carpenter and I had very high level, meaning very broad, just discussions where I've said, we need to come back. If we're gonna go forward on this, and I absolutely think we should go forward in substantially the manner that Kara has suggested, then we need to work with the school system to make sure September of 2023, we've addressed the traffic concerns, because they are two municipal buildings, but they are two vastly different uses for municipal buildings. And when I get to the RFP section, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make note of some of the materials that Kara's provided. If you look at the cultural programming section of her materials, pages 4 through 7 are exactly what I would rely upon for a scope of services. And I can, again, get into the particulars of the process. But that articulation of what culture is incredibly useful for a scope of services. And that's what I mean about combining vision with what the law requires, and we can get anything done. But we need direction, and we need solid support to move forward. Now, I have been operating on the fact that the board several months ago had reaffirmed that 204 Sisson Road, and I love the marketing aspect of it, but I will never go further, and you've heard me say that from day one. 204 Sisson Road is a municipal government building. Ms. Mawhinney writes in her report that it's a mixed-use municipal building, and I love that phrase. But it's a municipal building, and it's a building that the Board of Selectmen, as the executive branch, own, operate, control, and are responsible for. So I'm hopeful that through your leadership, Mr. Chairman, to have this conversation in this manner tonight, and the board members for engaging in that, I'm hopeful that we can build off of the vision, the hope, the promise that Ms. Mawhinney had to actually get it done, because we've articulated, and it's here in a simple single page, of what the costs are. And the costs in fiscal year 2024 for cultural affairs programming are minimal compared to the building needs that we have. And the building needs that we have are not insurmountable. It requires a commitment. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe. How much is in the revolving fund?
I don't know off the top of my head.
So I think last report I saw was $300-something thousand, but we can update that.
Okay. Two things come to mind. The first was Kara's comment about confusion. What do we need to do, Joe, to take the handcuffs off and set her loose? Because, quite frankly, we have talked about this for years at this point. Now we have a very capable person who's done this. But I do believe we need to take the handcuffs off and give her enough control where that she can move forward. And I have not heard a board member say yet that they're not interested in moving forward on this project. So what do we have to do to take the handcuffs off and set her free? And traffic concerns, that can be, some of that can be addressed with programming when we do our programming. I would imagine collectively we can figure that out. Because I know it's very important to a lot of parents to be able to pick their kids up, and they don't want them on school buses. And the thought of sending them, I've heard this before, down Parallel Street to make that line, I don't believe the residents are gonna pass that either. But I do believe we can figure that out through programming. Most importantly for me, you said you needed direction. What do you need from a vote of this board tonight or next week for direction to set her free?
So that would
I'm
then.
interested in starting.
Sure, that to me would then get into the question of, so we know it's a municipal building, and how do we, as a town, under Chapter 30B, fill a municipal building that is not going to be primarily government operation? And so for me, the short answer is you do a request for proposals. And so that's why you have two distinct topics on your agenda this evening. The first would be a request for proposals to fill it with cultural programming. And so that is specifically a process by which the Board of Selectmen, through the RFP process and the administrator, would offer the classrooms for rent in a particular manner and in a particular use. Remember that Ms. Mawhinney was brought here because we had exceptional staff that were able to keep that building operating on a MacGyver budget, if I can call it that, for several years. And so with the change in staffing and the way that the employee situations went, we, the town, had an opportunity to create a dedicated position for programming for cultural affairs, something we've never had before. So now that we have that, so the question then becomes, what is the proper way to fill those classrooms with cultural affairs programming? And the short answer is by empowering me to do a request for proposal, working directly with Ms. Mawini on the scope of services, because then we can come back to you, the board, and say that we've given broad notice on what value the town puts on each classroom, depending upon the accessories or anything else that's in the room or the size of the room. And then tenants that respond to that can enjoy not a one-year lease agreement, but a 3-year use agreement, license agreement if we want to call it that, lease if we want to call it that, but really give them the satisfaction of knowing they can have a multi-year, 3-year agreement, and the town can enjoy the fact that you have a rate schedule that moves within that 3-year period, but it's all known in advance. So to me, that's where the next discussions come into play on those RFPs. The first one, of course, would be to talk about cultural affairs programming. The second one would be, because I am still working on the assumption that we want to have municipal government in there. We have what I would call 3 municipal government uses right now: cultural affairs, housing, and recreation. And so we've talked this past Saturday about adds to staff and things like that. We don't have a lot of program space for government. So it would be prudent for us to set aside some space in that building for non-cultural, non-housing, non-recreation use. And we can dive more into that. But then the third point is, and this is where some others have come and said, we need to do a study about what the building should be. And that's where I remain firm, Mr. Chairman. We, the town, have had numerous studies over the years, and that's that massive 3.5-inch binder that I have. The best use of that building was determined by an architecture firm hired by the town when the school system transferred from a single-town school system to a regional school system, and it was handed back to the Board of Selectmen. The highest best use of that former middle school is as a school. And so that's another conversation we should have. Now, there's a way to do educational programming separate from cultural, and that is social and human services and potentially an integrative academic program.
So thank you. That addresses one part of it that we're already working towards. The other part of this is everything that she brought up tonight, not related to requests for proposals. So bringing in bands, bringing in payment, bringing in, what do we do to make it so that she can go forward with that?
So if I could, I think we're already doing that. And to me, that is cultural programming that is of a government nature. That is to say that she has a span of control over space separate and distinct from the classrooms, where no different than our community center, she's finding people coming to her saying, I want to use that auditorium, I want to use that gymnasium, I want to use the courtyard space, I want to use the back of the building. We can do that immediately. And we have a commitment in our capital plan that's going to go a long way towards doing that. So for me, and not to be argumentative, to me, the handcuffs aren't on. There are no shackles, there is no gag or muffling or anything like that. On the contrary. But to really tell the town, because what I heard 3 years ago when I was the interim administrator and I was doing my first prep meetings for town meeting, the Capital Outlay Committee at the time asked me, what's the plan for the cultural center? And I had been new enough to say, I don't know. Where is it? And what are you talking about? And that's where I learned that this had been this ongoing discussion about a board's action in 2016. So for me, we, the town, have gone a long way towards answering, what are we doing with that building? We're committing to it. And so direction on the RFPs will go a long way to help Kara keep doing what she's doing on the other wings of the building. And it will just solidify that we're going into town meeting committed to the building.
And a few moments ago, you mentioned to this board that you needed vision and direction from us. What do you need from us? That's what I'm trying to get.
So for me, it's the RFP discussion that we should have. How do you want me to properly give notice that we want to fill the classrooms and the spaces that we've used? These folks that are here that are tenants have had leases granted to them, but the board has told me over the past few years to re-examine that, to come up with a solid finance model working with Kara. So the way we execute all of that is for you to give me the bandwidth and the direction to do the RFP. And I think that we can have that done in a short order of time so that anyone that's responded, and again, we're relying upon the statements within the cultural programming document of what we're looking for. I think everybody, and we'd have a pretty good statement at town meeting to say that we have an RFP that yielded 30 to 40 responses, and we can execute 30 to 40 contracts for 3 years, give confidence to the financial people of the town that we have solid revenue with solid programming.
What do you need from us?
A decision on the vision of the building to basically support the vision as a cultural arts center for marketing and branding purposes so that we can make it appealing to people and not have confusion as to what it's called. The RFP process, we need it simplified immediately. We need to make a decision so that we can have a timeline because we have tenants that run programs. And to have them sit there for another 6 months and not know if they can run a program is just not going to be beneficial to us.
Okay. Follow up from the board, Larry?
No, my vote is to give you what you need to move forward. My objection has been, or comment has been that we open this up as much as we can and get as much input. And further that, these programs, all you're doing comes in place to further inform us of what capital expenses we need to make. Because my fear is we make capital improvements that then don't fill your program. So that was my original comment. Is your director of cultural programming, I guess it's called. But I want to be sure that that's tied into how the building's used overall. Because I don't want you to have your hands tied on how you may need to do things. So I'm very supportive of doing what you suggested.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am too, although I think one of the biggest misses here, because it doesn't align with the use, especially if you consider when most people are here that would, that you would be appealing to with live performances and such, wouldn't be in the winter. I am concerned that we don't have any proposal in front of us that talks about integrating a HVAC system, an air conditioning and heat system. Because if you put a heat system in that's preclusive, then you're duplicating costs to be able to cover the same square footage again, but this time with a different system. I'd like that to be a consideration, because I don't see how you, even the artists, I mean, sitting in the classrooms, I mean, I remember one of the reasons that the elementary school got rebuilt, and there was a substantial discussion about the middle schools. The way the sun hits those buildings on one side, it's really hot, really hot. And I don't, it may be fine that these people are so dedicated that they're willing to sit in that, but I'm not too sure that you're going to get the public coming in large numbers that way. There has to be a mechanism to keep that building at its roughly even temperature.
Julie?
So just to answer what you need from us, I'm wondering, I know that we saw different information on license agreements versus leases. Does Kara need clarification on that from us too, as how we would like to proceed, or?
So I think that's more for me, meaning it's a license agreement because the Board of Selectmen is offering municipal property up for non-municipal use. So that changes the way that we've done it in years past, but I want to emphasize that it changes it for the stronger and the better for all parties.
Okay.
And so that's why I'd need some brief discussions on those two RFPs.
And then I agree with Larry in the sense of giving you flexibility with the rooms, because although I know that we need some government use, I mean, I'd rather see what happens with the RFP and what kind of offers you may get, so before we determine what's being used for government, although I understand the idea to keep them segregated so that they make sense. I'd like to give you that flexibility up front.
Mary?
It sounds to me that what our town administrator and cultural director need is for us to get out of the way. and let them put the RFP together, which sounds like Kara already has piece parts of it in that documentation we had tonight. I agree with Don's concerns about the HVAC. I had a conversation with that with Bernadette one time there and another time with Brianna. So I know that's an issue, but let's let them move forward. It can be a parallel process, but step A is see what's out there. Let's just let them do it.
And I want to leave this meeting tonight knowing that you know that we're accepting your vision and that you could work with the town administrator, and hopefully the town administrator gives you kind of some broad reach to start bringing in these programs. We have more than $200,000 in the revolving fund. There is a spending cap. So it's not like we don't have money to fix the little things. Though I may agree with the HVAC, there is a fair amount of critics to this. We do need to walk before we run. I think if we go to town meeting and ask them for $5 million, they may say no. And for everybody that's in the room tonight, we need strong support at town meeting, because this is a very positive conversation, and this board unanimously loves what's going on in that building, and we want to expand it. Nobody has ever said anything different. So whether you send back to the board with Joe action items, but I'm interested in starting as soon as we can. Joe will talk about the timeline on the RFP shortly.
Yep.
But everything else, Kara, that doesn't require an RFP and layout of the building. I think I've at least heard from the board tonight that we're 100% behind this. So let's move forward. So action items, if I have them by Wednesday, I'll have them on the agenda next Monday night for the board to vote. But the board sees your vision and supports your vision. That's what I took out of this. Anything further, Larry?
No, agree.
Don?
We'll-
Mary? All right, I'll open it up. Go ahead, Mary.
I said I was all set.
Thank you, Mary. Anyone in the public wish to talk?
Bob Weiser, I'm the music director of the Harwich Cranberry Festival. I want to thank the Select Board, thank Kara, thank Town Administrator Mr. Powers for getting to this point. When we, in the Cranberry Festival, approached the board probably 7 years ago, 8 years ago, suggesting that we use the auditorium for some music presentations in the condition it was in. It was to get us to this point. It was to demonstrate that there's an audience, that there is an interest, that there is a community commitment to the arts, both the arts that the studio artists present and the performance arts that we present, and all the other things that Kara has brought onto the table since she's come on board. So I want to pat all of us on the back for having resisted the bulldozer approach to the building, among other things that we've resisted, and to get to the point where we are committed to going forward for cultural purposes. And as a person who has organized events successfully in a space that is not exactly state-of-the-art, I look forward to being one of the presenters who gets to use that space as we bring it into the 21st century from the 20th or 19th century that it has been in. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Joe? Oh, go ahead.
I brought props.
Cereal? Oh.
For the record, she said she brought props.
I thought this might have candy in it.
That's why you can't dance.
My name is Sharon DeGennaro, and I'm in room 105. And I have been quaking in my boots that you're going to take my room away. So I thought I'd come and voice who I am. I'm the resident disabled person. And 5 years ago, I wrote to you. I had to tell you what I would do with the room. And I've made a mess of it, and I love it. And I have a brain injury, deal with extreme social anxiety, and I work in my room by myself, but I know all these wonderful people are around me. And 3 years in, I applied for a grant from the Art Council to teach and work with other differently able people. And I got that grant, but COVID took it back away because we had to shut down. So my goals are still there, to work with differently able people, and my room's pretty packed, so I'm thinking of renting a space outside of my room for these events, and to work with Kara with the work she wants to do with differently able people. And rumors abound about some of us being taken out of our rooms for the rooms to be turned into offices. So I thought I'd come tonight and ask you to address that, because from what I'm understanding, the first 3 rooms may go to town offices, and I'm in the 4th room. And I have more supplies in my room than most of the people in the building. And you'd have to take me out with a tractor trailer. So I need advance notice if that's going to happen to me. But I would like that addressed tonight, if you will, because that has been part of what's plaguing all of us. I think there's very high fear levels. And I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to hear what you're saying about the building. It calms me. And I would like to say, for years and years, I have paid my taxes for people to send their children to school. And I have no children, and I'm not really interested in them. So I'm saying that if you invest in me as an artist, I have invested in my community my whole life. And I would consider it a great gift that you can see me, not only as an artist, but a differently abled artist that has to work just a little bit harder to maintain all of this. But I absolutely love what I do, and I've been doing it for 45 years and want to continue as part of a community. So thank you if you could address that for us.
Thank you. Joe, do you want to respond just to what the process is going to be on the RFP?
Sure. So generally speaking, the request for proposals, what we would do is we draft a scope of services. What is it that the town of Harwich is looking for, and in this instance, looking to get in exchange for municipal property space? The scope of services is typically written by the department heads, so that's where Ms. Mawini and I have been meeting many times over the last 4 or 5 months to sort of vet that. So in this RFP, we could identify the cultural categories that, again, are in her document, pages 4 through 7. We would want to give usually 4 to 6 weeks' notice. We publish it on the town website. We publish it on the state register. We, the town, want to be very descriptive of, you know, this is the building we have, these are the rooms that we have. We value these rooms at X dollar, so we would look hopefully for a minimum, you know, of that level, but the town reserves the right, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have criteria to evaluate it. And that's where you have the highly advantageous, no advantage, and disadvantage. And I have talked to the folks here, and I would put it out to everybody, that one of the criteria that I would want to rely upon as your chief procurement officer to make recommendations to you is it would be highly advantageous if a respondent has experience working in a classroom setting in a town. And so, you know, I think what we're saying is the model that we're trying to solidify by the RFP is what we've already had. We're just trying to put structure around it so that all parties are protected. And so again, 4 to 6 weeks for notice, call it 2 weeks for evaluation, and the I would be for the board to execute a number of contracts beginning July 1, 2023, for a period not to exceed 3 years.
Thank you. John first.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman, but to the previous speaker, I want to be consistent. That is a municipal government building, and there are multiple uses that we can and do need to use it for. There is an element of municipal government where anyone can speak to the fact that we're bursting at the seams in this building. It doesn't mean that we may not have other buildings, but it has to be on the table in the short term for some of those spaces to be used. And that doesn't mean that anybody that's here that presently enjoys a classroom would be moved from that.
Thank you.
But I do want to be consistent in putting it out there.
Thank you, Joe. John.
John Chory, and as most folks know, I've been pretty involved in this building since I've been involved with the building. And I hate to follow this young lady here right now with her presentation. That's a tough thing to follow. But I've heard I could go on, Michael, like you, on stuff for hours, but I know I don't want to do that tonight. People don't want to hear that tonight. But I did hear a couple things about negativity on the building. I have not heard any negativity on the building. I, for one, am not negative on this building. Some people may perceive that to be, but I am not. I am in favor of this building 100%. All I'm asking is what we're going to do to use this building. And we're starting on that road, obviously, tonight with Miss McKinney. I hope I say the name correct.
W,
there.
close enough.
I have a
Didn't
tough
turn
time
around.
with names, but I did read her report. I do have questions on it. I'm not going to ask those questions tonight. One thing that I do want to point out, and it's one that I've been steadfast on and I will keep being steadfast on, is capital. What's the capital cost for that building? In reading Ms. McKinney's report, Joe's report, the blue one back in November, I'm seeing roughly $40,000 to $45,000, if you want to call it, of revenue, at the time between expenses and revenues, $45,000 left over. And if you do the math, the last 6 years or so when that building's been in place, that generates about $350,000, which is just about where the revolving fund is right now. So those are pretty accurate numbers. Well, if this year's capital request for that building, the whole building, which you do need to look at that whole capital request, not just what an auditorium is going to be used for. Even the auditorium cost is high at $500,000. The total capital request for 1 year that you're going to town meeting for is $2 million. So if you use the numbers of $45 to $50 or $40 to $45,000 a year of revenues, it's going to take you 45 to 50 years to pay back the $2 million. That's just the $2 million in 1 year. One of the capital requests is boilers. I mentioned it last week. Those boilers need controls. The controls aren't in that $2 million. There's no air conditioning in that $2 million. There's no internet in that $2 million. There's 24 items that aren't in that capital that's in that that's outlined right now. There's only about 5. So that's my only question, is the capital used for the total of that building. I love the report that Kara did. I'm in that building just about every day with pickleball. I go up and I see the artisans. I talk to some of the artisans. I think it's a wonderful use for that building. So the negativity is not coming from me. I just want to clear that up. I am in favor of that building 100%. I'm just one looking at it when I was on the finance committee, the fiduciary responsibility I had to the town of financing, and we have never answered that question yet. And that's all I'm asking for. So thank you.
Thank you, John. And you are correct. You and I could probably go on for an hour and a half, but I'll see you tomorrow morning, and we'll go through it then. The 45,000, just so we're clear, in 45 years, 45,000 is where we're at today. In her program, she's showing, and if you just look at the Plymouth Memorial Hall, you'll see what she was able to bring in. And that's a much smaller building with no municipal component. And then I'll save it for town meeting, but I'll mention it tonight. In 2011, the Board of Selectmen had a report that they gave to the town about the capital needs of that building. That's what we're asking for at this town meeting. And the 5-year capital plan that has to be voted by the town for that building is only just over $2 million. That's all we're asking for. In order to get more, we have to go back. But we're actually fixing things that were reported to the town in 2011. And this board, I don't know which members, and I apologize up front if I throw you under the bus, were given that building back at a regionalization time with no plan whatsoever. Through Carolyn Carey, Cindy, Kara, members of the community, we've managed to keep that building alive instead of letting it turn into black mold like most schools that get abandoned. And the one thing that the Finance Committee and the critics, and there is negativity, I'm not saying you, the critics of that building, nobody's shown the cost of doing nothing. This is an asset to the town, and the cost to do nothing right now is $1.5 million to tear it down and plant grass. That's the cost to do nothing. We're asking for $2 million in capital that was asked for in 2011. Joe, then Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is not to enter into a debate, but I would be derelict of my responsibility if I did not challenge the accounting that was presented that has a mindset that if we're spending $2 million and we bring in net 45,000, that it takes us 50 years to pay it off. That's not a note. We're not borrowing that, and that is not how our government works. We had a lengthy discussion on Saturday about our budgets. I presented a balanced budget to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee are still, even with adds to the budget, are talking about a balanced budget. We have the funding available in place if town meeting were to approve the entire capital plan as presented, including all of these costs, and we pay for it in the year that we do it. So this concept of where others have said, well, the town subsidized the building by appropriating $150,000 a year for 6 years, and there's nothing in the building, well, then that's $1 million. That's not how it works. And to put it out there like that is just confusing the matter. So the capital costs that we have a need for in this town in fiscal year 2024, if adopted as presented, balance and we have the money. And to suggest otherwise, I think, is being irresponsible.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Waystack.
Mr. Chairman, good evening, members of the board, Mr. Powers. Mr. Powers, if I can, you spoke eloquently in administrator speak about the RFP process and so forth. Sharon wants some reassurance tonight, as do many of the tenants. In that administrator speak, does that really mean that you're not looking to eliminate any of these people, and you're really not looking at trying to move anyone out of their space? You speak at a level sometimes I don't understand, but my interpretation is that you're not looking to displace that young lady or any of these tenants with an RFP process. Can I assume that?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'll take the last one, which is the best one that I can respond to, because as I've told anyone that listens, I bear the responsibility of the town for the procurement, and I cannot show my hand. I cannot suggest that I'm going to write this RFP for this person or that person. So again, I will say that we can rely upon language that can capture what we're doing now going forward. And that's the best I can give you, because anything before that, after that would be collusion.
So I'll interpret that way, if I can, Mr. Chairman.
That's the best
that
way to
there's
do
no intent to eliminate any of these nice people who do fine work. And I just want to make one more comment, Mr. Chairman. In my 38 years in this community, I've never seen any municipal building go through the scrutiny that this building has gone through. And if we took this process from whatever committee it may be in town to examine each and every one of our municipal buildings, you'd never get any work done.
Thank you. Larry?
Joe, can I ask you a clarification just for my education?
Sure.
Step back. What drives the requirement from going what we're doing leasing to using the RFP process?
So I guess I would say that there's been practice for years that is not the best practice that the town would want to perpetuate. It's a liability. So in the cleanest, strongest, and most transparent way is to do it as a request for proposal where the board is saying we have municipal property, and that's why we have to continue to reinforce that, that we want to put out to the marketplace. You bear the right to say you want to use it for certain purposes. So it's simply because of the way that it's been done over the last several years, though well-intentioned, this is aimed to get us back on track and transparent.
Don?
I'm just mulling over what the town administrator said a few minutes ago, and I also want something pinned down. We're talking about a highly advantageous offer, including an educative component to it. Is everybody who has a studio teaching people? No. I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot here. I mean, we're turning something that's already operating one way and making it something else.
Let's try and hold the applause till the end. We've got a process. Let's follow the process.
So
Go ahead, Joe.
I appreciate the potential criticism. That's where I said earlier, I need direction from the board. There is no RFP language. The only thing we have is the scope of services concept as to how very finely and I think very accurately describe what culture is. The highly advantageous and any of that does not exist. It was meant to be an example to an earlier question about how can the town give comfort. And the answer is we can give great weight by an advantageous criteria. But there is nothing that talks about education, other than what I'm looking to talk about the other proposal.
Thank you, Joe. Kind of answer your question, Don?
Sort of.
Okay. We also have Kara, who we've hired for this. And I think it's very important for people to realize that as we craft the RFP, she has all of you in her mind. And that's something that ultimately the board is going to vote on the RFP, and highly advantageous is something we can use. It's certainly highly advantageous to me that you're in this room and you're in the building already and you're using it.
Right.
And I'll only speak for me. What Joe's outlined, and he's got the hardest job in the room, is he has to follow the law. And we did just put a lot of people into a building and we didn't go through any process. Unfortunately, that time's come up. I have not heard once from any member of this board or staff that any of us want to displace any of you. Never have I ever heard it in any meeting. Now, that's not to say, and I would rely on Kara as this gets crafted and who's in that building and where. If there's somebody in that building that's doing something in that building that they shouldn't be, that there's no benefit to the town at all, which I think all of you have probably had the conversation about what you do and you don't fall into that group. But we can't sit here and say that there's not somebody in that building that might not fit. But I do believe you've all had the conversations with Kara, and I think you're all here and you do fit. It will be up to this board ultimately to decide. And we all appreciate you being here tonight. One thing that I would ask is, Joe, that you work with Kara and really pin down what space you're considering for municipal operations, and then the board will vote on that next week. Because the board might have a completely different idea than you on who's gonna stay where. And I hope that gives the nice lady in the back a little bit of comfort. Okay. We're not trying to make you feel uncomfortable. We're trying to comply with the law, and we're trying to organize something that wasn't as organized as we would like. Julie, anything?
No, I think you've hit all the marks, so thanks.
Joe, anything further?
That was just on the cultural affairs. I do want to speak to the other one, but
Right.
other than that, I'm good.
Mary, anything further on this?
No,
And everybody in the public all set for now? Okay. Go ahead, Joe.
So then another potential use, I have heard from groups, I believe some other selectmen have heard from groups. Again, under the concept of what is the highest, best use of the former middle school, and it is for a middle school. And that was the line by the architect that had done the study back in 2010. I have been approached by folks that represent groups, and again, I want to put out there, just because I've been approached doesn't mean I can write an RFP for them. And so that's why I put it in the broadest possible terms. But there are rooms that could also be used to meet a need in the social and human services fields, which could include but not be limited to an integrative academic program. And so you can talk to anyone that deals with school-age children, you can you can talk to any academicians, and I can speak to several programs off Cape where communities are now looking for municipal space whereby they can offer academic programs where students are able to re-enter the school system. And that's either because they've been dealing with drug and alcohol rehabilitation issues, mental health issues. One program that I saw equally built into that was somebody from a long-term injury. And so that is a potential use in that building that I've heard from others in the community. Now, I want to put it out there, even if the board would direct me to go with that RFP, the town always reserves the right in any of its RFPs to not do anything. But I wanted to get a sense from the board, if you've heard from the community, and if you think there is a potential need that could be met there by doing a social services, human services RFP that could also include an integrative academic program.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Julie, I'll start with you.
So I've only heard one possible scenario and not in depth, so I don't really know that I'm able to really speak to that. I guess my thing on that certainly wouldn't be adverse to it. I just want to understand the particulars better.
Thank you. You have no opposition to him at least the town administrator putting an RFP out. We
No.
don't have to approve anything.
Yeah,
but-
no, I don't have a problem with that.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
I wanted to use this forum to put that out there because there has been a lot of discussion, and I wouldn't want anyone to think that things were being done. So there's been no work on that, and I appreciate where the board member's coming from. I think the way that you would get informed about it is a potential RFP.
Okay, thanks.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure we even go with that. I'm not receptive at all. Because this is like a family vacation where you're halfway to where you were originally planning on going and then decide, well, let's go somewhere else. I don't understand this. We said it was going to be a cultural building. We're already backing off of that to a certain extent to have backup space for the general government. I mean, unless we're building an addition on that thing, there's a whole heck of a lot of uses that are being talked about. Somebody is going to be standing when the music ends.
Larry?
Yeah, Don raises a good point. My understanding, I see Sheila in the house too. She might have a comment on that. But in the house, you like that, huh?
So if I could, my colleague is asking me, Sheila can speak, I cannot. In other words, she can speak to a potential need out there. I couldn't have a dialogue because it's collusive.
I guess.
Larry, go ahead, finish.
Well, my point is that I know there's an argument that we need some more resources in Harwich for that type of activity. I know there's a program going on where people, instead of being expelled for bad behavior, they can move into some clinical advice and have some help for, right now it's a week that schools are involved in. I'm just not sure the cultural center is a place for that. It's needed, but I'd like to, it's a great idea. I'd like to explore what else we have available, whether the Arbor House they have a room for that, I don't know. But there
Thank
we
you.
go.
Thank you, Larry. I'm going to go to Selectman Anderson and then to Sheila.
I certainly am in agreement that we should let Joe pursue that. I'm also of the opinion I'd rather protect the building for more culture and what we know we need in terms of office space. I just envision that maybe taking more space than what we want to dedicate to that. But certainly Joe should fashion the RFP and see what's out there. It's not that we don't need youth services on the Cape.
Thank you, Mary. Sheila?
I think that I've been unclear about whether it's an either-or situation, because about 2 years ago, there was a group, a nonprofit, looking for one room in there for working with kids at risk. And the CARES predecessor and I were talking about what a great collaboration it could be with artists working with kids at risk, because we know that culture obviously really helps kids in so many ways. I don't know if this is the right forum to say this, but the Albro House is on the affordable housing trust now, and so this department is going to need a home. And then I was approached by some nonprofits who
I don't
were-
believe that's Affordable Housing Trust. That was taken off the list.
Yeah,
That's not on the list.
Not at present.
Yeah,
All right.
but go ahead, finish.
So anyway, I was approached by a couple of nonprofits that are interested in doing, not taking up a lot of space, but having a space for kids that sort of care along a continuum, including kids that are really just not making it in school, either substance use problems, mental health problems, behavioral problems, and that they would have a contained space where they could do their educational stuff and then transition back to school. And it would provide a range of services. So it's not anywhere near taking up a lot of the building, but it just seemed like a great space to do it, especially with all the artists, being able to work with artists as well, so,
Thank you, Sheila.
okay.
Joe, is there any problem, and I would look for consensus of the board, to showing us what it would look like on the map of the building? What space you're thinking of before we waste, I don't want to waste your time creating an RFP if it's not worth
Yeah,
doing.
no, I would work with Ms. Mawiney to certainly try to figure out what we think works best for flow. Again, we have another department that's there in housing, and I believe, I'd have to go back and check the report, but I believe your subsidy vote last week on the plan from Dr. O'Neill called for Duffy Health Center to have a space in the building as well.
And I would look, last time I brought up getting rid of the Albro House, I think that was one of my bigger attacks from the public, but, we have that space, and we have one department head in that space, and we lease an office, and I'm not sure where they stand, but I would at least invite that conversation back to the board on what we're gonna do with that building. But I would really, Kara's opinion's gonna have a lot of weight, in my opinion, because we've tasked you with cultural and that building, not in its entirety. And then I think to Don and Larry, a conversation with Joe, I think, is warranted, because the insurance companies told him a portion of that building, percentages, have to be municipal. And then cultural, a portion of that building has to be cultural.
Right.
And I know the unofficial mayor of Harwich, after last meeting, took exception that I called it a municipal building. It is a municipal building with a great cultural program inside of it. So Joe is trying to follow the law, as I've previously mentioned, and has a tough job to do. But if we could see what it looks like on a map, Joe, before we go through the
Certainly.
looking at an RFP, I think
Certainly.
that would give a lot of board members and public a level of comfort that they don't have. Julie?
Thank you, because that's why I thought we were looking to try to assess everything we could possibly do, and that's why I'm open to that. Of course, I would want to better understand the particulars of any particular program, RFP, or whatever, and I think the chair makes a good point, rather than waste our time.
Sure.
Give us an idea.
And if I could, just, whether we do 1, 2, 3, or however many, in any one of those documents, it's always going to be stated that the town reserves the right. So even if we did multiple RFPs, if you determine that the best use is all culture in that regard, we could rely upon the language in the RFP to say, even though we did this, we're putting our stock in this other one. So none of that trumps the other, so to speak.
Thank you.
And Michael, I had a question on the, I guess, definition of municipal building and the percentages that you laid out. Is that due to insurance, or is that some I just didn't understand why that was a firm.
So according to our insurance provider, 204 Sisson Road is a municipal building, and it enjoys that privilege under our zoning use table. Because the town has never told our insurance company that it is not being used for municipal purposes. So we must have a threshold of 30% of the use of the building must be directly tied to municipal government use. Now, I've also said that we could argue that contracts that tie back to non-municipal use are still a municipal use. That's why we can't abandon it, and that's why we can't call it a private cultural center. If we call it a private cultural center, we have to transfer care, custody, control, and insurance to somebody else. So we can meet the 30% insurance threshold, we can meet the 50% cultural threshold for cultural council and grants, we can meet it all because we're the municipality and that's our building.
Thank you. All set, Larry?
Yeah.
Done.
And I would like to see that at some point, because I brought up 100 Oak Street, also known as the community center. That doesn't seem to meet that definition then. I mean, I'd like to know where that divide is, because you're parsing out that cultural isn't really a town activity, but recreation is. I don't understand that, and can't be resolved tonight. I'd like to see something in writing about that. But beyond that, one other thing I'd like to put into this conversation, given the fact that we just had that last discussion with Sheila, the schools are projecting enrollment declines. I can't believe that there's not a room somewhere that they could devote at some point to something like this, because they, I mean, but just look at the enrollment figures over the last 10 years. The schools were designed for a particular capacity load, and they're not hitting it.
Julie?
Actually, thank you for raising that, Dawn, because I was wondering, and I don't know if Sheila, if you want to speak to that, but I was wondering if this would be if this kind of a use, whether it be 204 Sisson or some other particular municipal building, but not a school, would be better, because maybe the kids who you're talking about, who would be served by this program, would be more comfortable, and to your point of having access to artists to maybe help them through certain parts of their difficulties, but also to get them out of a school setting, in the sense that, you know, they're going to be, maybe they're not all from this town. I'm not quite sure what this program would be, but without having to get in the weeds on that, I'm wondering if your take on that is to actually not have it be in a school setting, because that probably raises anxiety levels.
Yeah, part of the problem with being in the school setting with kids that are trying to abstain from substances,
Right.
deal with their mental health that might be causing the substance use, is that it's just too easy for them to relapse or just use. And whereas when they're in an environment where with their peers, where they're all working together on the same goal of you know, staying away from that stuff, and being encouraged by adults, mentored by adults in the community, they thrive, you know, so.
Okay, thank you. You've answered my question, so it sounds like that would not be a great
My
setting.
last
Yeah,
question.
so no matter
Michael.
where it is, it's, you know, my department's going to be expanding long after I go. It's already way beyond capacity, as you well know. And, you know, this is just more programming to catch them upstream, so.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Larry.
Joel, this is not pick on Joel Knight, but I have one other comment or question. You know, I question the definition of municipal building, but now I question, is there any reason we can't, for us, an insurance company, say it's a municipal building, and put a sign out there saying it's a cultural center, rather than 204?
No, there'd be no issue with that.
And get away from the it's kind of confusing 204 system /
Sure. We've already convinced our insurance company that it is at
We
least
can get rid of
30%
that and
municipal
call
use,
it.
and we're good.
Thank you.
All right. Without anything further, I think these three topics, leaving here, Kara, I hope you don't think you don't have the support of the vision and direction. And I would bring back any bullet points that you want voted from the board next week. Joe, I think it's fair to say it's top priority of the board, other than the budget and the warrant, to get these RFPs out so that we can start to add some comfort to these folks' lives. But anything you need from this board by Wednesday, I can have it on the agenda for Monday night.
Very well, thank you.
Alright. And thank everybody for, you have a comment? Come on up. No, that's okay.
My name is Heather McKenzie, and I'm one of the tenants over at 204. I keep coming back to the fact that you're saying that it's going to be 30% with the municipal occupation, but we're 100% occupied right now with the artists, or, you know, the creative people. And so when there is this conclusion that we don't need to worry, you're saying if it's going to be occupied by 30% eventually, there are going to be people displaced.
I think I could solve that for you.
Okay, thank
We
you.
have a cafeteria, we have an auditorium, we have a music room, we have a gymnasium, we have a field out back. We have an awful lot of room to get to that 30% without displacing artists.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna move on from this subject, so any of the artists that don't wanna stay through the rest of this meeting, I would only ask that when you exit, if you could go downstairs before you start the conversations, because the microphones will pick them up if you
Bob,
stand
can't-
outside.
Bob, you can't leave. You can't leave.
Can we go, too?
No.
Just leave. Right. No, I
And
just
then,
want-
if it's okay with the board, I would like to try and get our department heads out of here. So I would like to bounce around on the agenda like I do, and I would start with Paul, since he spent the, most of the day here Saturday.
So, Mr. Chairman, that would be old business B, discussion on proposed zoning amendment articles, is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm doing.
Yep.
And Paul, thank you for coming and
Good
sitting
evening.
through another meeting this week. Anne Marie, I'm only skipping over you because you have two topics. Go ahead. Support for two topics. Paul, go ahead.
So I was invited to come back and meet with the board tonight. I wasn't told what we were gonna talk about, so, looking at you, asking if I could.
And to be fair, what I had said was if we need Paul, and I would say you did have a planning board meeting between our last visit with you. Anything new come out of that?
So at the public hearing that the board had was, well-attended. I think all told, there was about 50 people between those, in the room and those that, came to the meeting virtually. The planning board voted to close the public hearing for the amendments to the floodplain regulations, and they voted to continue the public hearing on the accessory apartment and the solar bylaw. One board member asked me to take a look at the numbering scheme of the solar and the flood zone bylaw, and I need to do that. And that was pretty much the substance of what happened at the meeting. There was, I think, a lot of support from the people that attended in terms of wanting to see some changes to the accessory apartment bylaw. And so I don't think we received any negative comments. And they were all supportive of wanting to make some changes to the bylaw that would be less restrictive, so that we can help people that would like to have accessory apartments go forward and get those permitted through, the proper channels.
Thank you, Paul. Questions from board members? Julie?
No, thank you, Paul. I think the hearing was well-attended, and the only thing I would like to just add to what Paul said is we also talked about the DCPC Six Ponds District came up, and we talked about the fact that that's a much larger review, and I just want to assure, I've had different feedback from some people, and earlier we heard a bit of comment on that as well, and I just want to say that there'll be public hearings, there'll be a lot of input. We will talk about all those things moving forward over the course of the year. And whatever's best for that district, protecting the water quality and all that, I don't think there's a person on this board that's not in favor of making sure all of those protections stay in place. I only commented about the fact that we weren't addressing that in this particular ADU revision, so, thank you.
Don?
Rather than make a statement for Paul, I've got a question for him. Is there any part of this that does pertain to the DCPC, the access as written right now?
No, part of the reason, there were a few reasons why I didn't include that zoning district in any changes. The first was that.
I don't even need the reasons, it's not in there, right? as
It's
it
not,
says.
and that was deliberate.
Okay, thank you.
Larry?
No, I agree. Julie and I were at the meeting. It was well-attended. That question came up, and I think the point that Paul made and what we've made as selectmen is that this is a start. Additional activity will happen, but we need small steps are good at this point. Anything we can do, accessory apartments. The question that always intrigues me a little bit, in addition, was we've now limited that to a 6 months time frame, because no one wants a so-called Airbnb. but then someone raised the issue of summer help. And so that's going to be, I like 6 months, but it's going to be a discussion point that we'll have convinced people we need a compromise.
Mr. Chairman, so the 6-month requirement is already in there today, and we thought it was a good idea to leave that in there. I did get some calls from a landscaper that was looking for some housing for his employees, and those two things don't go together. And I agree that is something that we probably need to try to think of some kind of solutions.
But not part of this discussion.
Not as part of this amendment that we're
Right,
proposing.
thank you, because we need this simple, because we need to move ahead.
Don?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the argument that we can and should make is that this isn't supposed to solve everything that revolves around housing for everybody forever. If we get the ADUs and it allows people who might have been renting other things to be able to move into one of the ADUs because they didn't necessarily need something as big as that, that frees up housing for, like, when Stop and Shop and other companies lease out a whole house for their employees. That becomes more available. I mean, these things are all moving parts. You're never going to solve everything with just adding ADUs into our bylaws.
Mr. Chair, I agree, and I don't want to try to oversell this as what the impacts will be. This will just be one small piece of the pie of things that we need to look at to try to better manage the problem. We're not going to solve the housing problem. The main problem is the land itself has such great value at this point.
Julie?
Yeah, and I think, Don, obviously good points, and I don't think any of us think that we're solving our housing issues with the ADU. It's a step in the right direction, to Larry's point. I think the one thing it does help us address is the one thing the trust can't work on, which is, workforce housing. So those are the people falling through in the cracks, right? They're not going to qualify for anything eventually that we can build that's quote-unquote affordable and is going into our 5%. So this is also to help our people in town, and I know that the Airbnb discussion's a real one as well. I was talking to the building commissioner in Chatham, and they do a 1-year lease. Maybe we move to that after we see where we are, but let's just try to make these simple changes, see where we are, and if we need to reassess, we reassess. That's the wonderful thing about zoning. It can change after public hearings and input, so thank you.
Mary?
I attended the planning board hearing, again, in the cheap seats, and thought Paul did a great job walking all of us through these proposals, and I think they're a great addition. So thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Mary. And Paul, from now on, anytime you're on the agenda that you're not sure if you need to be there, you can call me, and I'm good at not wasting department heads' time. So,
thank you.
You're new, so I missed that memo. But thank you for coming tonight. Joe, you have anything? You all set?
I'm all set.
Okay. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Have a good night.
John, are you here for your contract?
Yes, sir.
Can we get a motion on that contract?
Where am I? Oh, here it is. I move that we vote to, approve the five 10-year license agreements for fish shanties located at 44 Harbor Road, Harwich Port.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
It's a tie.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mary?
Aye. Aye.
5-0. And now the next contract?
Oh, sorry,
That's really the one I was after.
sorry.
The dredge.
It's all right.
I move that we vote to approve an intermunicipal agreement with Barnstable County to dredge Allen Harbor Channel and Saquotucket Harbor Channel, contract not to exceed $198,000.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mary?
Aye.
5-0.
Aye.
Great. 5-0. John, if you want to say anything, you can, but, okay. All right, thank you.
That was what we were hoping for.
All right, back to B, B and C, actually, but B is debrief on March 4th, 2023 budget meeting and discussion on fiscal year 2024 budget. Joe, do you want to say anything?
Sure, just give me a second to get back to where we were.
Thank you. Sorry I'm bouncing around, but I don't like to keep people here late.
First, I would just want to make you aware, we had received an email from Mr. Charles Gruskus that is included in the packet because he was talking, oh, I think I'm on the wrong one.
You're talking about the school.
Yep, sorry, no. Yeah, thank you for Saturday, that's what I wanted to say. The finance director, assistant town administrator, water wastewater superintendent and I met at length this afternoon to go over the differences that were talked about for water wastewater. Anne Marie and I are working on the spreadsheet that I've been using to partner with Munis that she's using to get that to the finance committee hopefully on Tuesday ahead of their public hearing on Thursday. And again, their public hearing Thursday evening at 6 o'clock, if my memory serves correctly. 6 o'clock notice was for the capital outlay plan. That's a requirement of the charter under Chapter 9. And then the public hearing on the operating budget, which is also a charter requirement under Chapter 9. So Thursday evening, March 9th, beginning at 6 p.m. The finance director, town accountant, and I will be participating virtually in that. Otherwise, we keep progressing in the process. And of course, I wouldn't miss the opportunity to say that because town meeting is 56 days away. And then the only other part of it is, even though this is budget, I will be presenting you with a substantially complete warrant of articles separate from the operating budget.
And when do you plan on doing that?
I'm sorry, I just buried the lead. Next Monday, March 13th.
Thank you. All right, so just general discussion. Julie?
No, I thought that overall our budget session went well. I didn't really come away with too many questions. I know that we got some additional info from Fire Chief LeBlanc. I don't really have any more to say than that.
Okay. Don?
I agree with Julie. I mean, pretty much said everything that day.
Okay. Larry?
Yeah, good discussion. I think we need some follow-up information, as Julie's mentioned, just for me to better understand some of the line items that were fire and water that you're working on now, so we understand it. But it was a good discussion.
Thank you. Mary? I know you weren't there.
Yeah, I was remote, but saw most of it, and I thought it was a pretty good discussion.
Thank you. When does the board want to take up things like the 4 new firefighters, the other positions, and start voting support on some of these? Or do you just want to do it as part of the overall budget? I know we still have to have the conversation about the requests that have been made to, and take a board's position on whether or not we're going to have separate articles for all of this. But when do you want to start voting support, or not?
I think we should parse that out and start next week, because you don't want that to be a massive discussion about the budget overall. It's going to bog down for hours.
Agreed. Julie?
I agree.
Yeah, I'm still like the article side, but that's separate discussion and willing to support it as soon as we can, because we need that out in the community.
Joe, for next week, if we can start talking about the enhancements of services, and we'll start voting individually board support, and whether we want to keep them in there.
Sure. So I think what I'd like to rely upon is that Appendix B document, so you can see that as it ties back to Article 4, and I can add any notes or subtract anything on that.
Okay, thank you. Mary, anything? Further, I should say?
Nope, we're on a good.
Okay. Anyone in the public? They all left.
Not everyone, right? Come on.
Not everyone. Chamber, yeah, we got a couple. Monomoy Regional School District budget presentation, general discussion on that. Larry?
Well, we talked last time, and this is repeat, so I thought that was a great job. I think it's a good budget. I think Joel is starting to bring up one of the comment letters we had, and our board has also had a letter about going forward. It looks, we were successful last year, a year and a half, to get the elementary school moved in a more favorable or more a fairer direction. Now we need to look at how we're assessed sometime in the near future. And but as this year's budget, I'm okay with it.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I want to go a little bit further than Larry just did. I know that there was some pushback by the town of Chatham on this. But I can't believe that they weren't paying attention over the last couple of years to what we were talking about, because this goes back to even when Stephen was meeting with them. We made it really clear that the elementary school was a fundamental problem, but that problem was growing up and going into the rest of the school system, creating a major disparity on the funding formula, where you've got Chatham being hit for like $100-something thousand for this year in the formula, and we're over $1 million for the increase. It's becoming so disparate. This isn't like we didn't tell them last year, and we got the agreement modified for the elementary school, so now we'll go after more stuff. We were out front, very honest about it. We'll do what we can to immediately affect some positive change in the situation, but there has to be a secondary conversation about the overall agreement, the way it's structured. And I'm disappointed if people are thinking that we're extorting them somehow, because we're not. I mean, this was out there for several years now.
Julie?
No, I agree. I mean, I think, when we moved to a regional school system, we depended on information and numbers we were provided. And, nobody can predict the future. I'm not implying that, but I think there's always room to discuss revisions and, how to address it so that everything remains a viable system moving forward. And I think Chatham has to have a realistic outlook on that as well. I also just want to say that although I think it's I'm always in favor of the school budget. There are times that there are increases needed that are difficult for us to stomach. But in this scenario, I appreciate the difficulties that the school is facing. We all know the cost of goods and services. What I can't really get behind is the use of ESSER funds, despite what Scott relayed to us about how there's a bubble in the middle school and numbers, and I don't pretend to know the numbers better than the school district or the school committee, but I will say I have a problem with the way that current budget is structured, in the sense that you're adding $250,000 overall for two positions, and we heard why they're needed. I don't really dispute that they're needed in a sense, but I'm not okay with taking the ESSER funds to fund the positions that are truly valuable to the students and to the teachers. And I remain with that problem in my head, is I want to support the school budget, but I want to support it funded properly. And I don't see that currently happening. So I don't know where that goes from here, but it's a real comment, and I mean it, so.
Thank you, Julie. Mary?
Yeah, I think when we get beyond town meeting, this ought to be a top priority. And coincidentally, we had that letter from Charles Grushka, I think, I might be massacring his last name, who has some pretty good ideas about other ways that it can be structured, I believe from his experience in the western part of the state. So I don't know what the right process is, whether we bring him in to talk about that, or if we put a subcommittee together, but I think we really ought to go after the middle school and high school funding parity. It's a parity issue.
Yeah, we definitely want Charles on our team.
Yeah.
Larry?
Regarding the funding for the elementary schools, the way that went, we all owe a debt of gratitude to Dr. Carpenter, because he's the one that initially, I think, put together those figures. And once everyone saw those figures, I think pretty much the discussion went away, or at least was favorable for us. I would ask, maybe through Joe, that we put this on Dr. Carpenter and Scott Carpenter's plate to put some of these numbers together for us on what he sees the budget going forward, because sometimes the facts of what's showing what the real disparity is in numbers might move us a long way, and he and the school staff are more expert than we are in putting that together.
Thank you, Larry. Joe, anything on that?
Yeah, and well, it's going to build on what many of you have said. So if you look at Mr. Gruskis's email, it is lengthy, but I don't know that I would take a word out of it in the way that he articulates. It covers everything, and I was particularly drawn to the third paragraph from the bottom on page 4, where he talks about the funding. So when I came in as your interim town administrator is when that concept was first floated as a side group, if you will. And Selectman Howell's absolutely right. Our dear friend and late colleague, Stephen Ford, was a big part of that. And having sat through various iterations of that study group, if you will, and knowing that we were running out of time to make sure we got something done, that's what we all accomplished last year. But whether both parties agree or not, I think is almost irrelevant. We haven't addressed long-term the issue, and this is just one example of one similar type of district where you have one part of the district is heavily populated and you have the other part of the district that is of greater property value and resources. And Essex and Manchester by the Sea that Mr. Groskus represents. Well, we knew there was at least one other system because we were talking about it in our discussions, and we shelved it for the time because we were running out of time to get something done. So for me, it is not only not an insurmountable discussion, it's a necessary discussion, and I think Select Board Anderson, Member Anderson said it as well. Let's tie up fiscal year '24 and vote whatever you vote. And once we have that tied up, let's immediately get back to the table to talk about that, because as I've said, and when I say I've said it, I'm not an original thinker. It's been said many times before. But we're right back to where we started from, and for me, when you look at the entire, so we are, I often say, a municipal corporation of 75 million, and we're almost at 30 and 30. 30 for our school district, which is 2 towns, and not every taxpayer gets that. And everything for the town of Harwich, they're almost on par, and so that trend may continue, but it's a bad look. And it's not what was anticipated from what I hear from hearing from everybody. So I appreciate an independent party such as Mr. Groskus making reference to Essex Manchester by the Sea District. And I think, again, Select Board Member Anderson may have said it, we were looking at least one other district that's more on the western part of the state. And he puts it right in there that while funding a regional district strictly by student population is most common, and he's right, it's most common, there are precedents in Massachusetts where other factors, such as property wealth and total population, are significant factors in the funding formula, and he gives that example. So it behooves all of us to, keep our business together for fiscal year '24, because Chatham's town meeting is, I think, 12 days after ours, so they're at 68 days. Let's get that done, but let's get back to the table. And this isn't a threat by anybody. This is meant to be an understanding that we have a valuable district between 2 towns, and we have a vexing issue that we're not done with yet.
Thank you, Joe. Julie?
But to that point, that's why I go back to the budget. So my point to Scott Carpenter, Dr. Carpenter, last week was, okay, so these are 2 positions at $110,000 each with another 30 grand for benefits, and they're in your budget. You're telling us that you're gonna be able to, with this bubble and the numbers and the moving, like it's a shell game, and I'm not accusing him, I'm just saying literally it feels like moving numbers around. But Harwich is gonna be paying the bulk of those, and that is exactly my point. That is in this budget, but the other people who are the boots on the ground, and I know I keep saying that, but they're the valuable assets to the teachers and to the students that are not in the budget, because there's this idea that whatever bubble bursts next year, they can move all the stuff around. Well, what if that bubble doesn't burst? Or what if it's replaced with some other hurdle? My point is, we're having this discussion. I support the budget, but I don't support the way they're funded. And again, do I understand why they're probably in the budget versus ESSER funds? Yeah, because the ESSER funds expire in 2024. Who's applying for those jobs? Nobody, if you want to be funded for a year. But at the same token, how do we say we're okay? That's a huge variable. We're talking, I don't know, those salaries, I think total probably like 600,000 or so, 500,000. Those, they're needed. They can't come out of that budget, so they'll be in there plus this 250. And Harwich is gonna be paying the bulk of that. So how do we get that across? We're talking about tying things up for this year, which and then having that larger discussion, which I agree 100%, that's what we need to do. But how do we address currently what we're being asked to fund?
Yeah, because that moves long-term.
Right, it becomes it's flipping on the ledger, that's all. I mean, so we're gonna say okay to that? Well, we don't know how the people who are really in there helping our kids and helping the teachers. We heard that there are a lot of new teachers for various reasons. They need help. I don't really know that they need people, and do I understand the need to crunch data? I do, but we're not even out of COVID, and the kids are gonna continue to have ramifications from this for some time. So statistics and MCAS scores and all this other stuff is irrelevant to me if the kids and the teachers aren't getting the help they need to help the kids. So I'm really stuck on that because right now I see it as totally opposite of how it should be.
Don?
First, I'd like to rise to agree totally with Julie on this. And I've said this for a number of years. You and I have served together for a number of years. I really don't like if I can't see it sitting in front of a classroom of kids, then it becomes secondary or tertiary. It's not the highest priority. Because everything that you're doing should be geared towards educating the kids first.
Right.
I mean, it's nice if the paperwork is tidy, but that's not the objective of having a school.
Right.
And I would like to go global because there's a good chance that something's going to get quoted in the newspaper and it's going to look like we're getting natty with everybody. When the district was being discussed, just so that Joe can even hear this, the numbers that people thought they were looking at were 45% as a breakout. When we started having a panic discussion, it was in the high 60s, and we predicted it was careening upwards at that point a few years ago. It is almost at 80-20. I mean, and it's not going to be long before it's at that point. And then they have to ask yourself, whose school is it then? Is it really a multi-town district, or is it something that somebody's using the services of a school that's being provided essentially by the other town? That's why some durable formula has to come out, and it can't be based just on students right now because they can't project out that they're going to have rising enrollment that's going to wind up evening that out. We are so far away from what we contemplated when that school was being discussed, because the initial discussion was even more bland. It was, can we share a central office and amortize the cost of that and then just have separate school systems? But we got way beyond that. And then we finally did establish the district. 80-20 is not sustainable. It just isn't.
Thank you. Anything further, Mary?
Oh, all set.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that will come back. Approve the presented changes to the Monomoy Regional School District Regional Agreement and vote to place an article on 2023 annual town meeting warrant. Discussion, or do we want to have a motion?
I'd be willing to make a motion to approve the changes as written.
Yeah, I mean, I think he did a great job laying it out this year. In comparison to last, it was a
Much
very
better.
easy document to follow.
And it doesn't change the process for amending the agreement, which prior iterations kind of did.
Okay.
I'll second that.
So Don's going to make the motion?
I did.
Okay.
Second.
Approve
And
it
place
as
on the
written and place it on the warrant.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mary?
Aye.
5-0, Joe?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could, now that you've had the vote, the only concern that I have, you can see the material that was provided. Adding that to our warrant is going to give us our largest warrant ever, I think. Is there any objection if I could work with my counterpart in Chatham, as well as Dr. Carpenter, to use language that says that the substance is on file in the clerk's office or something to that level? Or can we at least try to get a format that's going to be more suitable for our warrant? Because when you're getting to the level of pages we're getting at, it has a financial impact as well as a delivery impact.
Can we do a handout at town meeting?
Why can't it be a handout?
Yeah, handout that's,
Whatever we do would have to be in both towns, but that's the kind of thing I would like to be able to talk about.
yes.
Yep, thank you.
All right, update on the, where are we at? Here we go. E, update on the following requests for proposals. Joe, starting with consultant for the local comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe you folks have in your packet the request for proposals. This was substantially established by our Director of Planning and Community Development in consultation with the local planning committee. And as you know, we have a funding source that our retired planner was kind enough to secure for us. We can rely upon that to fund what we hope to be a number of robust responses to this. I will tell you that, as we've talked before, you know, the timing of our updating of our local comprehensive plan tied nicely with us reopening the comprehensive water wastewater management plan. We're also aware of two other plans that have been expiring that we wanted to add. So there is language within this one that also talks about the housing production plan and the open space and recreation plan. And so I think the upside is we're able to leverage the timing of this to put that out there. And so I believe we might already have this published, but I will say that if we don't, it's ready to go if the board is okay with it.
Thank you. Larry, questions, comments?
No, I say move ahead.
Don?
Same.
Julie?
Same, yeah.
Mary?
Agree, let's move it.
Okay. Joe, do you need anything from us?
Nope, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one would be 62 Route 28, West Harwich Baptist Church.
So we have completed at long last after weather delays, equipment delays, and staffing delays, the ground penetrating radar survey of the general property in question. We're now working with KP Law. You may remember that John Giorgio of KP Law gave us a very concise list of the things that we need to get done, and the next step now is tax title research in concert with what we have on the survey. And so we continue to move forward on that. I have tasked that to Brianna Nickerson because we know that what we're trying to do for this is to impact somewhat on workforce housing. And as our housing advocate, she's not limited to the projects. And it's helpful for her to learn the RFP process because we expect to have a number of RFPs going forward. So that's the latest update, working now on tax title research as the next step.
Any questions, Julie?
No, I don't have anything.
Don?
Nope.
Larry?
None.
Mary?
No,
Joe, I guess I've been asked by one member of the public, are the results of the ground penetrating radar public record? If somebody wanted to see that, can they?
So theoretically, they can. It's not associated with a public body, and what I would argue that through council is we're trying to release them in an organized manner so that it's part of the RFP. So that is the way that we intend to put that out there. You know, I'm not looking for a fight on public records, but I think it's the best way to present it because it has context within the RFP documents.
My only concern is anyone that's looking to move forward on this, which I think there's several people now that are interested. The results of that test could be detrimental or could make them not want to bother.
So for me, the concern would be the town doesn't enjoy the ability to put in language that talks about the survey and that we make no guarantees on any of the survey. I wouldn't want anyone to just look at the survey and make a decision. I think it's an incomplete analysis.
Thank you, Joe. All right, intermunicipal agreement, IMA for 374 Main Street Bog. That's the long-talked-about agricultural education center on the bog that Leo Kukunis currently rents for the public.
Yeah, so for me, I'm waiting to hear back from representatives of the Cape Cod Regional Technical High School and their attorneys and the conversations they were having, I think with potentially Mr. Kukunis, but certainly with the town's attorney, on finalizing the concept of agricultural education so that we can deal definitively with the Article 97 issues.
And you're preparing or pre-planning on having an Article 97 article from the town on town meeting floor in case we need it? To
Correct.
change the use of
Correct,
that.
in case we need it, yes. Yep.
There is a petition article that's been filed for the same?
There are 2 articles related to that bog by petition that were filed.
Okay. Well, I'll just say it to the board, I was not in the meeting when you met with the attorney, but we've leased that for agricultural uses for 22 years. And I don't see how adding the word education to it changes the use of that and why we would need to go back and spend 2 years trying to change it with the state. And the attorneys so far have not been able to figure that out. But adding a word to the other side of agricultural, no matter what word it is, makes no sense to me at all that we would have to go through this process and not move ahead with the tech school.
And it's discouraging because this has been under discussion for, 3 or 4 years? And it's a simple concept, it has a lot of merit, and we just can't seem to get it moved.
And I've asked for, I've said that to John Giorgio, and I've asked him to look into Town of Dennis renting to capabilities, because it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And it was purchased the same way. Don?
I'm totally flabbergasted. I mean, because no matter what happens, even if it's used for educational purposes, fundamentally, it's being used for agricultural, educational services to actually grow stuff. And to say that that's, you're not going to be sitting in a classroom there watching videos. It's actually growing things and raising things. So how is that different?
Well, mowing the ditches is technically agricultural. So,
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
well, hopefully they see the light.
Lawyers need work.
And I see Amy Usowski's online, and just, I have communicated with John Ketchum, and I told him as soon as we get definitive answers from the attorneys, I will bring it back to Amy so that we can have a meeting with the Conservation Commission and keep them in the loop on what we're doing and why. Judah Eldridge, and this is not really an RFP at this point, Joe. It more is an update on an article for town meeting to get the appropriation for the difference, correct?
Potentially. The update now is through the good graces of the Chair of Real Estate and Open Space Committee and the Chair of the Community Preservation Committee, they were able to unlock funds that we can rely upon to do the final proposal. The Assistant Town Administrator is advertising for appraisal services. I believe there were 6 responses that have come back thus far, with only one of them willing and able to do the work. But at least we have a funding source, and we will potentially have an appraiser set up for that, and then can talk about additional funds that may be necessary to finalize the project.
Can we do everything in our power to be done with this after this town meeting?
Your lips to God's ears.
Thank you. Can I get a motion on F?
Can I combine all 4 of them?
You can, yes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we vote to approve, 1, a one-day wine and malt license for main sale events for March 30th, 2023, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., to be held at 204 Sisson Road. 2, the National Multiple Sclerosis Society Road Race on June 25th, 2023. 3, Harwich Chamber of Commerce Road Race, June 24th, 2023. And Harwich, and 4th, Harwich Chamber of Commerce Port Summer Nights, Wednesdays from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. from July 5th until August 30th, 2023.
Moved and seconded. Cindy, since I didn't call on you last week, do you want to talk?
What about fireworks?
We haven't gotten.
Is that on the, is that,
You've turned the page if we haven't gotten that far.
why don't you add number 5 to
Oh,
that?
5, okay.
Throw 'em all in there.
I erroneously neglected to include number 5, the Harwich Chamber of Commerce annual fireworks at White House Field for September 16th, 2023.
Is that part of the second?
Yes, second.
Okay, Julie's a stickler for rules.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity. These are all repeat annual events that the Chamber puts on that we look forward to doing again.
Thank you. Any questions for Cindy? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mary? John? 4-0.
It was nothing personal.
All right, so that's through 5. G, discussion on bylaw charter review committee recommendations for 2023 annual town meeting. I put this on really just to start discussion on it. One of them I know is one that we're gonna have to bring back and debate as a board, and I'm not sure without Mary and given the time if the board wants to start this one tonight or
I think we should bring it back.
bring it
Yeah.
back. Don?
Yeah, I agree.
Julie?
Yeah, I'd like to bring it back.
Is anyone in the public here that stayed all night to talk about this one? Okay. G will be bringing back, Joe, I would add it as soon as next week so we can get started on it.
Thank you.
A, old business discussion on creating a human resource position. You guys started this conversation in my absence. Don asked that we table this, or bring this back last week.
And now we lost Mary again.
I would ultimately say the way it's been talked about makes absolutely no sense to me, and it would require a charter change. We employ a town administrator, and I don't know why we would ever consider hiring human resources that would report to the board of selectmen, the executive body, and take away any power from the town administrator that we hired to run the town. And that's my opinion, and I don't see how we do it. And I don't see how we do it quickly without having to go back and revise the assistant town administrator job description and role as well. Because when we hired, half the job description was human resources. Larry, I'll start with you.
Well, I agree with the bylaw change. My point was not going to discuss that. My discussion, I wanted to point out, if we move with this position, we need to change the position description for the assistant town administrator. Because right now, they're all wrapped up into one. And I know that we have her position description in the packet of 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And so I think we need to go back and look at that as well, so the two positions make sense.
Don?
I went back and listened to the discussion again this afternoon. Not that I often want to revisit the meetings a second time. But there was a substantial amount of conversation. It depends on what you're looking for in this position, because there was a substantial amount of conversation from all the people who were present that they wanted a safe, confidential area to be able to discuss some things that may have something to do with the town administrator directly, may not. But we're trying to do two different things in these job descriptions. So I'm not sure that we're going to be ready for this town meeting for sure, because there isn't an agreement about what we're trying to accomplish with this position. I get what you're saying. If this is really somebody who's doing task work each day to, put out revised job descriptions and that kind of stuff, then maybe it is administrative in nature. But the other way of looking at it is HR department. And I personally was thinking of a larger scale thing. It organizationally makes total sense to me, because even in the media over the last year and a half, you wound up losing the president of CBS networks, and you wound up losing the CNN president because they were held accountable by an HR department that was independent of them. Not that we're in that kind of situation, but we really need, if I was looking at this as an HR director, where you would go to lodge complaints about your treatment, say, or appeal to something, it really needs to be separate. And I don't see that we're going to be able to have all these parallel discussions and wrap them up, considering how much other stuff we still haven't done yet for this town meeting.
Julie?
No, I understood, and I think, looking further at how these jobs are structured in other towns, I do think it's problematic in having somebody report to the board. And I would also go to the other part of this and to say that I was looking, and my feeling on this, I think, was Mary's as well, was to have an independent area that people could go and have the ability to confide and talk about whatever. wasn't aimed at the town administrator. It was aimed at, like, anybody working in town should have that sort of neutral space that they can go to report any kind of an issue. And I don't think currently we have that, except through our ATA, who does a phenomenal job. And I think you're right. I think it's going to take us more time to get it right, figure out how we can do it so that it has the biggest benefit for the employees, which is all I'm looking for. It's not aimed at any particular department or anything. It's to give the town employees a place to go for any difficulties, and they may not even be work difficulties. They could be other difficulties. But somewhere neutral, and not so much, I mean, confidential, of course, but our Assistant Town Administrator, Megan Eldridge, does a fantastic job. So having said that, yes, I think we need more time to figure out how to revise Megan's position, how we figure out exactly how we want this to work. So although I was really hoping to see it on this town meeting, I understand that it just may not be possible.
It's inching closer.
So I'm not gonna put it to bed until I talk to Mary, and she's willing to, because if Mary wants to continue to talk about this, we'll give her that right to talk about it. I have not found one town that has a HR department that reports to a board of selectmen, especially in with our government structure that we have. And I would argue that to take Megan out of that role, which I think that is a safe space and a neutral space. Some may not, but in my mind, the employees, if it's egregious, especially against town administrator, or anybody for that matter, has a union, and they can file a grievance. But I cannot find the structure that was presented in any other town, and it would make absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. With that said, that's a large part of what Megan does, is job applications, job descriptions, and if that frees her up to get us to move forward on a lot of the other projects, then I probably would support it. So I'll talk to Mary and then bring it back if she wants. Otherwise, I would consider it put away until after town meeting.
But let's not meet really long. If we could start right after town meeting, it'd be really helpful.
I would, like I've told every board member, anything you want on the agenda, email me and it will go on the agenda. So timing-wise is up to you. G, we're bringing back. I think we're done.
I think we've
Town
covered.
administrators report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some quick updates. With the impending departure of our finance director, town accountant, I tasked the assistant town administrator with working on some resources to identify some additional help while we do a search for a finance director. We may be able to come back as early as next week with a contract for you to contemplate for accounting services done by an accountant through an accounting placement firm. However, there is very good news. Megan Green, who was the was the assistant to the finance director, has been, it is a promotion, but it's still within the HEA collective bargaining agreement. She has applied for, and I have appointed her to the role of assistant town accountant. Since the day she started last year, she's become an even stronger asset on Munis. And although we would have liked to have done that in tandem with a new finance director, we know that we can rely upon Megan to help us with a lot of the accounting stuff that needs to get done between now and town meeting. And secondly, pleased to announce the appointment of Mr. Michael Ramirez. He is going to be a scale house operator over at the disposal area. So I think some positive action taking place on the employment front. And other than that, I wish everybody a fun parade, because of course everyone should be going to the St. Patrick's Day Parade. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, that's my report.
Thank you. Selectmen's report, Julie?
As we mentioned earlier, Larry and I attended the planning board meeting to discuss the ADU and the other revisions, and it was a well-attended meeting. That's it.
Done.
I attended a meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee on Saturday. It was well-attended also. That's all I have.
I have nothing to add to that.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
No, they all want to stay.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.